Welcome back, committee members. We will now consider the estimates for the Ministry of Highways, and we will begin with vote 16, Highways Central Management and Services, subvote H101. Minister Bradshaw is here with his officials, and I'd ask officials the first time you speak at the mic to state your name. And you don't have to touch the mic. Answer will turn them on, but just wait till the light comes on before you do speak. And I would ask officials, if you're sitting in the back and you're requested to answer a question, that you come to the front table, please. Minister Bradshaw, if you'd like to begin with the introduction of your officials and any opening remarks you may have. Before you begin, we have Mr. Weatherspoon sitting in this evening for Alina Young. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to take a few minutes to give you an overview of this year's budget from the Ministry of Highways. I want to thank all the people, all the thousands of people who are out there watching tonight, because this is very interesting. I'll start by introducing some of the officials here to assist me. I have Angela Curry, my Chief of Staff, Blair Wager, Deputy Minister, Tom Lees, Assistant Deputy Minister, Operation and Maintenance Division, Wayne Gino, Assistant Deputy Minister, Design and Construction Division, Ryan Cossett, Assistant Deputy Minister, Planning Policy and Regulation Division, Kelly Mokowski, Executive Director, Corporate Services Division, David Monroe, Director, Strategic Planning and Budgeting, Corporate Services Division. Madam Chair, Saskatchewan is back on track. It's been a difficult few years, but we are emerging stronger than ever. People are excited to travel our great province. Producers are working hard to get their product to market. Whether it's fuel, fertilizer, food, or a family vacation, a safe, reliable transportation network helps us all get to where we need to be. Our government is investing in our transportation system. This year's highway budget is $846 million. Our capital budget will invest $453 million. We will improve more than 1,100 kilometers of roads. Since 2008, this government has invested close to $11.5 billion in Saskatchewan highways. Those dollars have improved more than 18,000 kilometers. We're moving into the third and final year of the stimulus program. The stimulus program was designed to be temporary. It provided a $300 million economic booster shot. It delivered improvements across the network. We built passing lanes, upgraded thin membrane surface roads, and put additional dollars into municipal programs. Stimulus kept people working. It did what it was designed to do. This year's investments are driven from the growth plan. We pledged to improve 10,000 kilometers of highways in 10 years. We're improving 1,100 kilometers in this budget. We're now 3 years into this commitment, and we will hit the 3,500 kilometer mark this year. That's ahead of the pace we need to meet our target. Our strategic investments improve safety and strengthen our economy. That will keep us on track to maintain strong communities and strong families. We will invest $88 million in major projects. We will twin Highway 3 to roughly 8 kilometers west of Prince Albert. We'll build 14 sets of passing lanes on Highways 5, 7, 12, and 16. We'll continue to make improvements to the Highway 5 corridor between Saskatoon and Humboldt. And we will plan for twinning projects between Regina and Weyburn on the Highway 6 and 39 corridor that connects to major Canada-U.S. border crossing. We said we would spend $100 million over 5 years to improve safety on our highways, with a particular focus on intersections. This year, we will invest $12.4 million through our Enhanced Intersection Safety Program and $6.8 million through our Safety Improvement Program. It all adds up to $19.2 million of safety improvements that include turning lanes, street lights, warning lights, rumble strips, crosswalks, and sightline improvements. We have maintained a $1.6 million increase in our pavement marking program. Pavement marking includes center lines, edge lines, lane lines, intersection layouts, and pavement signs. Pavement marking is a cost-effective investment in safety. Good pavement markings help decrease collisions. Pavement markings assist drivers when it's dark and in poor weather conditions. We will also repair, replace, and install new signs to keep our inventory of 120,000 highway signs in good condition. Several key corridors will see repaving work in this year's budget. It adds up to 170 kilometers of repaving on Highway 1 west of Moose Jaw, Highway 4 north of North Battleford, Highway 5 west of Humboldt, Highway 6 south of Nacum, Highway 11 north of Kenaston, Highway 21 south of Kindersley, Highway 23 Porcupine Plain, Highway 37 Shaunavon North and Gull Lake, Highway 210 Fort Capel. In addition to rebuilding roads, we will also maintain and preserve what we have. To maximize the life of our assets, we'll be working on nearly 900 kilometers of roads. We will dedicate $137 million for 200 kilometers of thin membrane surface highways and other rural highway upgrades. That includes 160 kilometers of upgrades delivered through the stimulus package. We will seal and resurface our pavements to extend their life. Our bridge program will invest more than $55 million this year to replace or rebuild 15 bridges. Some of the more high-profile projects include bridges on Highway 1 near Swift Current and Highway 11 near Lumsden and near Regina, and we'll replace more than 100 culverts. Last year, we added $455,000 to our mowing program. We are maintaining that increase this year. This improves safety by ensuring clear sight lines on secondary roads. It also helps control weeds. We will mow approximately 42,000 hectares. That's about 25% more than we did in 2020. Last year, due to drought conditions, we did our best to slow down mowing, especially in the southwest, to allow producers the opportunity to cut hay. It's dry in the southwest, so we will continue to try and help with hay salvage wherever possible. We will work with our agriculture producers to ensure they have access to hay in areas where they need it. At the same time, we'll provide enhanced mowing, particularly in the northern areas where weed growth can make it difficult to spot wildlife. We'll continue to support our municipal partners. This year, we'll provide $6.6 million for the Urban Highway Connector program that supports cities. The Rural Integrated Roads for Growth program grant is $22.5 million this year. That number includes a $7.5 million boost from the stimulus program. We are rehabilitating approximately 100 RM roads over 3 years and approximately 100 RM bridges over 4 years. We will continue to support the aviation sector. We will invest $850,000 in the Community Airport Partnership. With matching dollars, that means $1.7 million to improve local airports. Once again, $530,000 will be invested in improvements to short-line railways. With matching dollars, it works to more than $1 million invested in short lines. We'll continue to demonstrate our commitment to northern Saskatchewan. We're also investing $62.7 million to build, operate, and maintain the transportation system in the north. We will continue making improvements to Highway 155. The Wollaston Lake Road is nearing completion, meaning we won't have to build an ice road next year. The Premier recently promised to build the Saskatchewan portion of the Garrison Lake Road, and we'll continue to operate 16 airports that service our northern communities. Those are some of the highlights of this year's budget. I look forward to our discussion over the next couple of hours, and I would also like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all of our highway hotline staff, customer service staff, as well as our snowplow operators who have had a very busy winter season. and we'll be busy over the next few days with a major storm approaching. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions. I guess I would like to mention one more thing because I think it's rather important. To me, anyway, I come from Carrot River, and I want to give a shout out to the NIP1 crew. Those plows have just been going steady up there, and I've seen them go past our farm at 5 o'clock in the morning. They just are doing a fantastic job. So I want to just give a shout out to them. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Minister. I'll now open the floor to questions from committee members and recognize Mr. Weatherspoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, and to all the officials that have joined us here tonight, and to all those that are involved in this important work all across the province, and certainly thinking of all those that are keeping those roads safe as we deal with another spring storm. Hopefully it's not as bad as it's forecasted right now. I'd like to get a little bit more of a breakout on the 3-year stimulus dollars, the $300 million. What's contained in this budget as a part of that program?
Yes, like we've already spent some of that money, but this year's stimulus investment of $119.1 million includes $7.5 million for rural integrated roads growth program and $111.6 million in capital for passing lanes and TMS upgrades.
That's this year's plan. Thanks. Of those dollars, those stimulus dollars, are any of those attached to federal transfers?
No, there's no federal funding attached to those projects. We'll say like the Wollaston Lake and before, that was mainly done to Indigenous Services Canada. We put $250,000 into it on the bridge. Like we're done phase 1 and 2, but what we've done is we're applying to the federal government to be able to put money in for phases 3 and 4 so we can finish that to end up being an all-weather road.
Okay, so just on that project, and thanks for that information, on that project, what's the breakout of costs, and what are the costs required to complete that project?
provide the high level, and I can take it from there.
Yes, the money that's been spent thus far on phase 1 is $6.75 million, and phase 2 is $9.75 million. And phase 3,
I think you can 30 and
yeah, phase 3 is probably close to 30, and phase 4 would be about 22 million to actually make that. That would give it a complete run on that. But as for right now, this coming winter, like I said before, we will be able to run our trucks up there, and so that's going to save on the ice road, and you know, you can take the heavier loads going on that. It'll be kind of this is only going to be just through the winter months, obviously, but it's definitely going to help out because we'll be able to haul heavier loads on there, and you know, we don't have to worry about the ice conditions. Who knows what's going to happen? You never know from year to year on the ice conditions.
No, it's a real important project, I know, to the First Nation and to the community there. So it's an important project to come to fruition. It's one we've pushed for many years, of course. We're glad to see it progressing. So right now, the first phase, the first 2 phases are complete, which is about $17 million of spending. The other 2 phases, what's the status of those 2 phases? That's the $55 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's truthfully, I met with the Hatchel Lake First Nation and the Prince Albert County Council. We talked about the next phase of that project, and we sent a letter to the federal government urging them to commit further funding to the project. So I guess we'll see how that turns out. We don't know yet, but we're certainly we'll help where we can there.
So the project, the first 2 phases are complete. The other 2 are what we await then, and they don't have funding in this budget provincially. Is that correct? Or? No.
This is we're looking for Indigenous Canada to bring that on. So this is something that we're hoping that they will put money towards. We don't know for sure yet, but we have sent a letter asking for that, and so has the Hatchel Lake First Nation and Prince Albert Grand Council.
The of the $55 million that is outstanding for those final 2 phases, are you committed to a cost share in your appeal to the federal government on that, or are you asking for the entire $55 million?
Okay, I can correct that just a little bit. We've got the phase 2 is just not quite. We're about a month away from that's being completed. As for phase 3 and 4. We don't have anything committed in this budget for it, but you know, we'll see what the federal government comes up with, and we'll look at it at that time.
So the completion of phase 2 will, as you're saying, not require the ice road next year. It'll allow the all-weather connectivity.
Yeah, that is correct. So, like I said, it'll be, and you've probably been on some of the forestry roads, you know, that's what it'll be like. It'll be like one of the forestry roads, and you know, our winter forestry roads. So they will be able to haul their heavy loads up there. So they won't have to use the ice road this winter.
I know they'll be looking forward. They'll be very appreciative. You know, I know Chief has been very vocal about the importance of this to the community. The municipality has as well. Certainly they'll appreciate the connectivity, but they'll want to see that project through to completion. So your continued attention on the matter and commitment in subsequent budget years will be important. Moving along just a little bit, there's a new budget line, and maybe it's come from somewhere else. Just looking for an explanation. That's the what is it, $88 million for the remediation of contaminated sites.
Yes, it's kind of an accounting thing. What it is it's mainly land that where there was salt stored and maybe a little bit of diesel fuel spilled, and the accountants wanted to have a number in there for that particular, for that land, because if you were ever to sell that land, then it would have to be cleaned up. And I'll let Blair explain it better than what I probably can.
Thanks, Minister. Blair Wager, Deputy Minister of Highways. And Minister, you did a pretty good job. So yeah, it's the application of an existing accounting rule under the Public Sector Accounting Board, I think is the standard that we use. And because of that application, again, it's not a new standard, it's just the application of that standard. And as a result of our operations, when you think of across the province, we have multiple sites where we store salt to apply to the road. So any contamination associated with salt storage is what that liability is set up on our books. It's a non-cash, but it's just set up as a liability. That's the biggest portion of that $88 million. And then the other part is of course, we have lots of trucks. Those trucks require fuel. We store fuel on site, so fueling, if there's any kind of spillage, you know, that creates a liability for us as well. So, and then the last piece that it considers is we have a number of different pits across the province that we use for aggregate. And in some cases, we have situations where there's been dumping of garbage or anything like that that ends up in those pits. And if we were to clean all those up, these are all land-based liabilities that are put on our books. And if we were to sell any of these parcels of land, we would have to first clean that land up before it could be sold. And this just represents an estimated cost of all of that cleanup that we would need to do if in the future we've ever decided to sell any of those lands.
Okay, so this represents the total liability then for all the contamination of all of the highways properties. Is that correct?
So yes, that's correct. And just to take it a bit further for you, so the salt cleanup is estimated to be about $64 million. Very specific. It's an estimate, though, in terms of what we know today. This will be reviewed as we go along if we were to ever actually clean one up, and if it's higher or lower, this might get adjusted. There's about 151 sites across the province for salt. Hydrocarbons estimated to be in around that $14 million, and about 82 sites that were identified as some risk of some hydrocarbon contamination. And then unlicensed landfills or public dumping in our pits is the more technical term that I didn't use before, but and that one's probably in around that 4 million. Again, these are best estimates, and we have about 140 sites that were assessed there.
So this is, you're saying, a requirement with public sector, with PSAB, and to account for, in this way, the total liability on these lands in the event that you were to sell them. This would be the cost of cleaning them up. So if you don't, so it's a non-cash item you identified. If there's no sale of lands, is there any actual decontamination of those lands occurring? Is there a program on this front, or is this simply an accounting function?
So yeah, at this point, there's no plans, and you're right in terms of us this setting up as a liability, non-cash, looking at an estimated cost if we were to clean up everything all at once. But at this point, there's no plans that we have right now to do remediation at this point. There's environmental assessments that we do on some of our sites. For the most part, when we looking at our sites, we don't obviously want to waste any salt, and we want to manage carefully within our site and protect our surrounding area. So we keep that all contained. So there's those kinds of reviews that we take, and we'll take action to make sure nothing kind of goes off of our site. But for the most part, when we're looking at doing these reviews, it's to make sure that if we're improving an existing location, building a new salt storage facility, that we learn from where we are and what changes we make when we're building new stuff. So we do those kinds of things in terms of assessments and reviews. But right now, we have no plans to actually go out and remediate any of the existing sites that we're continuing to operate on.
Now, if you don't sell any of the lands, if you don't need to remediate any of the lands as you've budgeted for here, what happens to that budget allocation then? I guess I'm not quite understanding how it's a non-cash item when it's in the budget estimates as a line item here. It's not there as a liability in in some of the other statements.
I'm okay, ministers. So yeah, it's put on the books, appropriated as a liability, but not cash against it. If we were to again clean any of that up, then we would allocate and actually have to have cash to clean it up, and then it would come off that liability. So that liability will be there every year from this point going on. It will be adjusted if we figure out and learn more that number may need to go up if our liability we've underestimated, or it could go down if we've overestimated. So this is the first year that's been put on.
Okay, thank you for that information. Looking at one of the other budget lines there, infrastructure and equipment capital, looking at infrastructure enhancement itself, and it's down from last year was $361 million. This year it's $278 million, so down about $80 million, a little over $80 million. What's impacted by that reduction or that cut?
Yes, that was stimulus money that was used, and of course the stimulus is going down now, so that that is where that amount is changing. The we have the contractors knew that this stimulus was was going to be, it was $300 million, which was a very good shot in the arm for our contractors, but they also knew that that was going to be, that was going to be coming down. So it's, that's how come that number is down.
Thanks for that. What was that number then prior to the stimulus? What was the, in the budget prior to this 3-year program?
Yes, the overall capital has been pretty consistent. It's the stimulus that is coming down. So does that explain it to you?
So the, not exactly. So the budget line is $278 million right now. Prior to the 3-year stimulus program, what was that budget line?
Yeah, we don't have that number sitting here. That would be in the previous estimate books.
Thank you. Moving along a bit, I'm hearing from contractors, I'm sure you're hearing from our road builders, just with the incredible stress that they're under right now, huge inflationary pressures that they're facing from a cost perspective. Impacts as well with significantly reduced tenders that are coming out, so a challenged fiscal environment for them. I'm hearing from them that they're facing significant challenges around retaining labor, financing equipment, the cost of getting bonding and even bidding are a serious challenge right now, just sort of keeping those operations viable. And it has been made such a challenge by the extraordinary inflation in fuel. So I'm interested in, I know the contractors, the road builders have been advocating for some fuel relief or for some an adjustment to the compensation, some of the factors that are built in to the funding here, because they just haven't kept pace at all. I know other provinces are making those adjustments. I guess my question to you, Mr. Minister, is what we're planning to do on this front, because what I'm hearing right now is that the current situation isn't tenable for the road builders.
Okay. Yes, I was very happy. I met with their board on Friday, and to listen to their concerns. And their concerns are founded. And there is one thing that we do have in some of the contracts. We do actually have a fuel escalation clause that, if it goes over 7% more when they tender the project, that we would be helping them out on that end. Another thing that we're doing is on the progress payments. We're going to try and make those progress payments a little quicker than what we normally have done in the past. But I will. I certainly understand their concerns. Of course, these are the concerns of people, various different businesses, not just the contractors. And I give them great credit. These contractors do a fantastic job here in Saskatchewan. And but it's also not just them. It's inflationary pressures on whether you're going to build a new house and I can use one of my old sayings. I said everything's gotten so high that even the price of down is up. So it's hard, and so I guess we'll see how things shake out here in the end. But I certainly give them credit, and of course they're the same as anybody else. They're also looking at manpower and everything else. So
I understand that fuel is such a significant cost for these operations, such a costly component of a project that it's really putting many in a real challenge situation here. Other provinces are acting on this front. The fuel escalation clause that the minister identified has been in place for a long time, and it only applies to some aspects of the work. I understand that the buffer as well is deemed to be too high as far as for it to be triggered. I'm hearing from folks that it would be helpful to have all dirt components added to the fuel escalation clause. Is the minister, I forget, first off, is the minister, you're recognizing the challenge that the road builders are facing? Are you open to providing some relief or some adjustments as other provinces are? And if so, I think there's a few things that can be done that I'm hearing directly from the road builders. One of those is to add all dirt components to the fuel escalation clause that the minister just identified.
well, we're certainly certainly will listen to their concerns, and really we have had a $300 million stimulus put in there, but You know, and who knows what's going to happen here? Maybe the price of fuel will go down too. We don't know for sure. So I think it's a kind of a wait and see what exactly will happen.
The fuel escalation clause, of course, if you had that in place, it wouldn't be triggered if the fuel cost went down as is discussed. And but right now, folks are facing those costs, and as described to me, it seems to put these operations, these Saskatchewan companies, in a very precarious situation. I appreciate hearing that the minister is open to some adjustment on this front. I think that this is critical. We're facing extraordinary times, and if we want to build the highway and reseal and pave and do the work that we're doing, we're going to have to make sure that there's some adjustments to support those that are going to do the work. A second piece that they've identified is that the consumption rate that the province provides is significantly lower than the actual realized consumption rate, particularly for earth-moving items, I understand. And I have examples of how low the rate is compared to the actual consumption on this front. I think it's 90 cents a liter for meters cubed is what the rate is. Costs are often twice that, I understand, by way of consumption on earth moving. So a piece that they've identified with me and I believe with you that they feel would be helpful is an adjustment on that consumption rate to more reasonably reflect the reality that they're facing.
Yeah, we'll let Wayne G. now explain on this.
Hi, Wayne Guino, ADM of Design and Construction. So as you mentioned, we do have the fuel escalation clause. We actually put it forward, and it's been in our contract since 2005, so it has been quite a while. The consumption rates are fairly old. So at that time, we worked with industry to come up with what they are. The difficulty, of course, is some of the equipment has changed since then, right? It's become probably a bit more fuel efficient. But the other piece that we've heard from some of our contractors is the work that we're doing has changed a bit. So if you're out there doing things like passing lanes and stuff, it's a lot different where you're moving earth and actually building those than if you're doing one continuous section of roadway, right? So we've heard that from our contractors. We have to be a little bit cautious with that, looking forward though, of course, because we're doing a whole bunch of passing lanes over the next couple of years, but our work mix continues to change depending upon the needs that we have. So when you're actually looking at the fuel adjustment rate, it is 7%. So based on where they tender, the date that the tenders come in, we look up what the fuel rate is there, and then we monitor that throughout the actual season and see if they're above or below. So if fuel prices do drop, contractors may have to actually pay back a portion as well. So it goes both ways. And you are right that it doesn't apply to all contracts or all contract items. So we have major contract items that it applies to, things like surfacing and paving, aggregate crushing and the hauling component if it's coming from a ministry aggregate source, but there are a number of components where it isn't actually included. So The difficulty, of course, is a lot of these contracts, we entered into them in the fall with contractors, right? So we're working through that process now.
No, thanks for that. Thanks for your knowledge of the file and your responses. I guess I would just urge the minister. Folks are expressing that they're facing significant hardship. We are in a situation where we're in an extraordinary time with inflationary pressures. The province itself, receives significantly more revenues in this current economic environment by way of oil and gas and other resources. We need to make sure we're building out the highway system that folks can count on and depend on. So there seems to need to be an adjustment, in face of these extraordinary times. And I heard the same piece that the types of projects that folks are working on right now, the types of stuff that's being tendered, the passing lanes and whatnot, really drive up that consumption. So it seems as well, if that's the types of projects that are on the books and that are being let, then maybe there's a special factor for those types of projects as opposed to continuous twinning or some other project that where I understand consumption is less. So I would leave it with the minister, and I would urge him to work with the businesses across the province, the road builders, and to make sure that they're in a position to carry out the work that we need them to do, and make some adjustments here to provide some relief for folks.
Yeah, to that, at the meeting the other day, we have made a commitment to meet with them more times throughout the year to listen to their concerns. So, and they were quite happy. They were quite happy with that, and it's something that we are committed to doing, is to meet with them and listen to their concerns so we can move forward, and we want to keep these people working in the province also. There are people that provide great economy to the province of Saskatchewan, and also to our transportation system, which we so desperately need.
I appreciate the minister identifying that he's heard these concerns. I would urge, acting on it in a fairly responsive way right now. This is they're getting out to be doing that important work, and we need to make sure they're in a position to do so. Just looking back to the highways, the year that closed on highways, it's my understanding that there was $30 million that wasn't deployed of the budget last year. Is that correct? And what's that impact on this year?
Wayne Guino. I'm not sure if I have to say my name again. Thanks. So yes, it will probably be around $30 million that will be underspent in the last fiscal year. We're still going through year end, so we don't have that number exactly, but that is pretty close to what our estimate will be. And with that, we know each year that, you know, some projects don't actually get done. Not everything we plan can get done.
No, well, thanks for that information. I know it's a concern to folks that are wanting to see the budget deployed and see projects move forward. It's important to the road builders who are you know, planning their operations around those tenders, and of course then those projects have been deferred, so they take up you know, it's a loss going into the year ahead, where you're hoping to advance new projects, where instead you're dealing with you know, deferrals from the year before. And on that front, I hear significant concerns with the fall and spring tender schedules, specifically, you know, speak to the fall tender schedule. There's a significant deferral of the budget. I see that originally that it was 470,000 tons of asphalt concrete that was planned, and that there was a deferral of 132,000 of that. So almost a third of that project of those projects. Three major projects, or bigger projects, I understand, that were deferred. So I guess I just speak to the minister. That's a big hit. I mean, those are important projects to communities that they're counting on, and they're important, of course, to the road builders and their operations as they plan their labor and finance their equipment and work to be ready to complete those projects.
So just maybe, unless I wasn't following the question just exactly the way and the comment you were making, maybe just a clarification that this is work that we've put on the marketplace, so it's in the hands of the contractors right now. And many of these projects are quite large projects that are coming largely from the stimulus program, but also our normal base capital projects that we do every year. And so it's work that's been put onto the market, and a lot of them are multi-year projects, so contractors decide more or less when, you know, the pace that they go and what projects they look at. And often that's to make sure that they have the room to optimize their equipment and their labor and get as much work as they possibly can get done. So when we started the year this year, we were with them, we were pretty, I guess, aggressive or optimistic about what work they would get done when we looked at where we are kind of most of the way through the year in the forecast. So, and they were anticipating to get a lot more work done than they thought. They had a slow start. Not sure exactly all the different reasons. They talked about, you know, some challenges they had at the beginning of the year. So at the end, that $30 million work wasn't work that we didn't get on the market. It was work that we put on the market that we weren't able to get done with the contractors. So that $30 million, those projects had to carry into this fiscal year. And so we used the funding from this fiscal year to top those up, but to make sure that those projects still got done, the ones that we committed to. But in our fall tender plan for work that we needed to do this year, we needed to find some savings, otherwise we would have been over budget with those projects. So that was the reason we had to take a few of those projects that you referred to and defer them till next year to make sure that we got our commitments met on the projects that we started last year that didn't get done.
The other, Right. The other thing I do want to add to that is you mentioned the fall tender plan. Fall tender plan is just new projects that we're putting on the market. So as Blair said, there were a lot of other projects, multi-year projects that were already in contract. Most of our stimulus projects, as well as some of our regular programs. So, you know, the fall tender plan is not just the amount of work we're planning to get done in this construction season, right? So our intention is we're planning to get $453 million worth of capital work done this year.
I appreciate that explanation. I know it's been noted as a concern by the road builders to see what's a very significantly reduced fall tender program, as well as the spring tender program. So, and if you look at the previous tender schedules, 2021, 2020, 2019, pretty much on all areas, excavation, granular, asphalt, concrete, the number is a fraction of what it's been in previous years for the fall 2021 and the spring 2022 programs. So is the reason that that's a fraction, in many cases a third of sort of what what a low had been in some cases? If you look at granular, for example, is that because there's so many projects that had been let or committed to contracts that had been let previously that have yet been that are unfulfilled, but of course you need to have the budgetary capacity to pay those, or is that projects from previous years that are going to be executed this year, or why the massive reduction on these fronts?
Well, you have to realize that back in before this was stimulus money that was going in, and like I said, when I had the discussions with the road builders here the other day, that was put forward that was stimulus money. So what we got is we have all those projects out there that are ongoing, but we will be coming back more to our base amount once that stimulus money, that $300 million is used up, and I'll get Wayne to explain it a little bit better as we go through here.
Thanks, Minister. Yeah, so just to build on that, uh, it's different when you talk about quantities versus actual value of projects, because when you look at our tender plan, 2020 was by far the largest tender plan we've had, right? So both the spring and fall of that. It was extremely large. Now, when you look at actual quantities, it's difficult to compare year to year because we do different types of work. So if you're looking back, 5, 10 years, we did a lot of repaving, for example, on our major highways. So, 1, 11, 16, we did repaving, you got huge asphalt quantities, that sort of thing. But when you look at our roads now, they're in, better condition, so we don't have to do as much repaving on those types of highways. We do more maintenance or preservation work like sealing and that type of stuff to keep the water out. But we've moved more to our lower volume roadways, which take more to upgrade. So if we're repaving on our lower volume road, one of our lower volume roads, we may have to do shoulders or something else, which, it costs more for that roadway, and you don't get quite the quantities, but we're still doing that type of work. So, our actual work mix has changed quite a bit. We focused a lot more on, for example, northern airports over the last couple of years than we had 5, 10 years ago type thing. So we're changing sort of where our focus is, and as the transportation system changes and as we look forward, we'll have to continue to make those adjustments. So we want to make sure we are continuing to work with the road building industry on that, because overall our capital budget has been, our base, if you take out the stimulus, which was a huge jump, but if you take that out and you take out the Regina bypass, our base has been very consistent over the last few years. So the actual amount of money we're putting out there for the road building industry has been very consistent. It's really about the mix of work and really trying to work with our contractors and our consultants to make sure that we can get the best forecasts so that we aren't leaving money on the table essentially for work that isn't being completed.
Thanks for that information. I don't know if you'd have it readily available here tonight, Mr. Minister, or your officials, but I'm wondering if you could provide then, to give the bit of that context. Of course, we have the volumes associated with the fall and spring tender schedules that are available. And so you see the dramatic reduction in this year's fall and spring tender schedules associated with not just the years where the stimulus occurred, but with the years prior to that as well. So I guess just to the point about, that there's now possibly higher cost projects that are being taken on, and so that's not reflected in the volume. Could we have an update to, or be provided the information back to this committee in a reasonable period of time, the actual values associated with each of those years, and breaking it out for excavation, granular, asphalt and concrete, and the seal coat?
So we can provide the... We can supply the some of the tender plans, but it's going to take us a while to on the volume parts. But you know, you have to realize, like, I mean, $11.5 billion since 2008. When I just thought I'd get this on the record, you know, when the 08 budget was 708 budget was 448 million, and this year it's 846. You know, that is a dramatic increase of money that we have put into highways over the years. So it's not as if we're not putting the money into highways. We definitely are.
Yeah, no, but I appreciate, so is the minister then, we have the fall and spring tender schedules, we have the volumes. Is the minister able to undertake to the committee that in a reasonable period of time in the coming weeks that you'll be able to supply the value for each of those fiscal years associated with those volumes?
So I can go through the actual values on the tender plan right now, if that works. Okay, so I'll start with the most recent one. So in spring of 22, the spring tender plan was 39.3 million. The fall of 21, the tender plan was 157.3 million. The spring of 21, the tender plan was 85.4 million. The fall of 2020, the tender plan was 437.4 million. The spring of 2020, the tender plan was 55.9 million. The fall of 2019, the tender plan was 250.9 million. The spring of 2019, the tender plan was 53.6 million. The fall of 2018, the tender plan was 221.3 million. And the last one I have, the spring of 2018, the tender plan was 64.8 million.
And what was the fall in that one, the fall of 2017?
I don't have the fall of 2017. I just have the fall of 2018.
Okay. Well, certainly thank you very much for that information. The numbers are, reductions, from where we've been over the previous numbers of years. And I know I'm hearing concerns from those that are out involved in this work with respect to the lower volume being tendered and then the deferrals. And I appreciate you providing a bit of added context here today. And just to make sure I fully understand as well here, this year, the reason that this would be significantly less than, say, the last two fiscal years is because there was so much work that was tendered but not completed, not executed. Is that correct?
Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit of detail now, just to go through sort of how we look at our overall capital plan. And as we started off the discussion, we talked about, how we're going to be about $30 million under this year, right? So one of the things we do to manage that is we actively overcommit. So in the past, we've overcommitted somewhere, between 50 or 60 million dollars, all the way up to 70 or 80 million, because we know that some things won't get done, right? The design won't get done. We'll get out there, we'll start working, there'll be an environmental problem, there'll be something else that pops up that some projects won't get done. So we actively plan to try and do more work and get more on the market. And then what we do throughout the year is we carefully monitor how things are going by we actually do detailed forecasts every month where we talk to our project managers about every single project we have, trying to get a sense of where they are, what's going to be completed, and what that looks like going forward. So we're able to make adjustments sort of throughout the year. What happened to us back in 2020 was we had the best season I think we've ever had, right? Contractors started early, the weather was great. We really got a lot done. And we realized really early in the year that, our overcommitment, we were too zealous. We probably had too much overcommitment there, and we were going to be above our budget. So we as a ministry looked at that and said, we can't really go above our budget. What do we do? So we had to go back, and we got permission that year to actually go over our budget a bit. But it made us a bit more cautious. So what we did is we actually reduced how much we overcommit going forward the following 2 years. So last year we overcommitted somewhere around, I think it was around 35 to 40 million, and we're somewhere around that number again this year. So, the fact that we were 30 under, that we're sort of realizing that now, we're looking at that and going, hey, we went from, a high of 80, 90 million we overcommitted down to 30, 40, there's quite a gap there. And that's work we would put on the market. Now, the expectation is that work wouldn't get done, but the contractors would be trying to get it done. So it really highlights one of the management tools we have of trying to, change that dial a bit, where it used to be very, we'd be very, I guess, risky by having a huge number, and then as things happen, we have to drop our risk profile down because we don't want to go over our budget. So we are fairly low right now, and then we'll have to take a look and see where we go going forward.
No, thanks for the context and the detail there. And so does that sort of describe then the situation where I think you shared that in the fall 2020 tender that was $430 million. The one following this past one, fall 2021, is almost a third of that, $157 million. Does that sort of explain that difference?
Not really, because like I said, it was really, I think it was 2020 where we had our tremendous year. But it was in the fall of that year, sort of after we'd done that, where we put out a huge amount of work, right? So part of that includes stimulus, but it also includes some projects even that we were putting out there saying we're going to tender those for construction, essentially last construction season. And some of those didn't get done. And it's not because the contractor was late, right? Because I've heard that perception out there. Well, that project didn't get done. But with a lot of our projects, there's a lot of work to be done on them. So we give contractors often 2 construction seasons for some of the really big ones. Now, our thought often is, hey, they'll do a bunch for construction season 1, then they'll come back and finish construction season 2. But the contractor has that ability to decide how they do their work and where they focus their attention. So it's part of the fun of managing the capital program.
Right. No, I appreciate some of the context. Thanks for providing the information around values. That's really helpful as well. And I think this is good reasons as well for, as the minister says, those ongoing meetings with with industry and all the stakeholders that are involved in the road building to have their input. They need some adjustments, as I've said, around or some relief around the inflationary costs that they're facing. And then, of course, it's important to them to see the commitments or the tender opportunities to compete on. I'll shift. I always think we need more time for this committee. I'm sure the minister will give us a couple extra hours here tonight, but I should shift my attention a bit to some of the some of the actual projects out there. Of course, I know the minister will hear from lots of folks. I hear from lots of folks from around the province that are concerned about a certain portion of highway or a certain highway, and I know you know, I hear from lots of municipal leaders as well on this front, and folks across the province. Just to get to a few of those, could the minister provide an update as to where Highway 8 south of Langenburg is at, some of the improvements that are needed there?
Are you ready to talk about?
Okay, to answer your question on that particular road, it's not due to for this year. We'll be doing routine maintenance, but it is looking. We're looking at it on the 5-year plan, and Tom can maybe talk more on the routine maintenance that we do on highways such as this.
Tom Lees, Assistant Deputy Minister with the Operation Maintenance Division. So as the Minister talked about, in terms of there's that, you know, overall rehab and rebuild of a road to bring it near new condition. But in the meantime, our operation maintenance staff who are across the province will deliver annual routine maintenance. Depending on the road type, the time of year really dictates the type of treatment that they'll go and do out there. You know, when you look at spring and especially our freeze-thaw cycles, we see a lot of potholes that pop up in the spring. But because of the nature of the road still being wet, lots of times our crews have to go out and do some immediate repairs, or in some cases even just signing so that the motorists are aware of the hazard. until they can go out and material is available and the conditions are adequate to do longer term maintenance treatments on that. So, you know, from an annual perspective, we go out, we assess each one of the roads, what type of maintenance is required for that year to keep it safe and operational for the motorists, and then we'll go out and deliver that throughout the season.
Right on time.
Thanks for that information. I'll certainly for folks in the area, I know they've been in corresponding with their MLA in the area there as well. They've received some commitments. I'm not sure that this undertaking is consistent with what they've received, but it's an important project to those folks that are connecting. I want to follow up on a serious safety concern that I've brought to the minister's attention, that's been brought to me and to the minister by some community leaders in around Vanscoy, and that's the Highway 7 and Christensen Road intersection. And now this is Highway 7 heading south to Calgary. It was a single lane until 2021 when it was turned into a double lane. Prior to that twinning, there was a left-hand turning lane onto the correction road, which is the 350 correction road. And I understand there's been, you know, it's a very dangerous corner. Prior to having that turning lane, there was a death there as well. The folks that have represented this issue to me and to the minister are, you know, the fire chief, the police, head of police, the rural municipality and local residents, as well as folks that work at the mine that have a lot of concerns. I understand there's 11 shift changes a day, and the mine, if you're heading south on this road, the mine is, you turn right. And so what happens is the right-hand turning lane fills up with traffic, 11 different shift changes in a day, 60 to 100 semis a day that are making that turn. And then the issue is that there's no longer that turning lane to get off onto that correction, which is a significant road with a lot of traffic as well. And so you've got folks that are pulling out and using the passing lane where folks are humming along, you know, at much higher speeds. And they're having to slow to make that turn. So they've been pushing for that turning lane to be for a turning lane, left-hand turning lane to be built out. When I hear from the police and the fire and the community, they're very clear about the very serious risks that are in place right now. I recently attended a meeting with some of the ministry officials, along with some of the community members on this front. I appreciated that meeting, but what folks are looking for is a commitment and a plan to ensure safety at that intersection. So I guess I'd look to the minister to hear what commitment and what plans he has to resolve this situation.
Well, thank you for that. As you well know, you know, the intersection safety aspect has been a priority of this government ever since we've had the tragic Broncos bus crash, and thus far it was determined that a left turn lane from the Highway 7 onto Christensen Road wasn't warranted. But you know, we're pleased to meet with the citizens, and I know you were there too. So it's and we're certainly want to listen to their concerns. And thankfully, there haven't been any recorded collisions there since the completion of the twinning in 18. But you know, after the meeting, the officials went out, they visited the site to make sure that, you know, all the flashing lights were working, the intersection signs were up and whatnot, and they were. Now, that being said, we're looking at other improvements that we may be able to consider, and you know, in addition to the signage in place, and you know, maybe there could be some conditions or some things that would warrant change there. And Tom, I guess I'd let you speak to that more. Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of this intersection in particular, I'll talk a little bit about kind of what our short-term and our medium and long-term plans are there. So in our short-term plan, it is going out, and we've already completed this assessment, going out, taking a look at the intersection, what warning signs are already in place in advance of that, and there are flashing lights with important intersection signs that are installed. and then looking at what other opportunities there might be to put additional siding up while we can get through a full analysis of the intersection and look at what some of those longer term improvements are. So our medium term and what we're going to focus on now is doing a conflict analysis of the intersection. So when we look at intersections, we take into consideration traffic volumes. We look at what historical collisions at the intersection would be. What we heard at this location is that, there are what I would say near misses where they're not being registered through SGI as an actual collision, but near misses. And so that's what this conflict analysis will do. And ultimately, it's setting up cameras at the intersection that will be monitoring the traffic so that we can go back and assess the near misses and take that into consideration. So once we have that information in hand from the study, then we can go back and look at what improvements, and it may be the extension of the right turn lane. It may be adding in a left turn lane there as well. The one thing that we want to keep in mind, though, as we do the conflict analysis is what we heard is that there's a lot of truck traffic, primarily in the winter, from some of the salt they're hauling out of the Vanscoy mine. So we'll make sure that we're timing our assessment adequately to get that traffic volume and that turning movement information in hand.
Thank you for the information, and I'm glad it's on your radar, and I'm glad that there's been a review of the site. Certainly the community's been making the case, for over a year, and they also identify that there's much higher truck and traffic volumes at different parts of the year, including actually a period in the spring as well that they describe with another business that interacts with that site. Obviously, the mine site is busy all of the time. So I will appreciate the officials' attention and response and detail. I'll continue to be clear with the minister, though, that this does need to get resolved, and there needs to be an adequate safety measure brought about. The left-hand turning lane that was taken away is really recognized as a loss by those that utilize that artery, and they really feel at risk. So I will continue to urge the minister on this front, because when you sit, it's pretty compelling when you talk with that police chief and the fire chief and with the local community and then all those workers and all the families that connect to that mine, and with all those shift changes every day. There's a lot of lives at stake there every day. Moving along a little bit. The minister knows I present a petition a lot of days in this legislature for the good people through Hudson Bay and Priestville, who had connected with me a while back and supported them to build out a petition for the community. And it's, I think, almost been signed by everyone in the area, because we've got a real stack of them, and many signatures through Priestville and so many through Hudson Bay. And this is Highway 9 between Priestville and Hudson Bay that I'm speaking to. I'm interested in hearing from the minister what actions he's committing to resolve the serious concerns they're identifying.
Yes, well, I have, I've certainly, I've traveled over that highway numerous times. I was over it. I have to say I wasn't over it this winter, but I was certainly over it last fall. And there's been some hand patching and some deep patching, machine patching, and base mix, and we spent quite a bit of money on that. Actually, we spent $535,000 on just routine maintenance last year on that section. And as I stated in my letter to you, the Ministry of Highways is also, they've hired Stantec to conduct an audit of the construction and design from Usherville to Highway 983. We've certainly been working on doing some fixing on it, and actually over the last 5 years, that highway's received $2.6 million in maintenance. But right now, we've got a little something else going on too, and we're working with the feds on. We put an application in for the National Trade Corridor Fund, so I don't know whether we will get that or not. that fund is made for trade. So, you know, when you take a look at the logging industry up there with Weyerhaeuser being there, it's, you know, it's important not to, you know, it's important to Saskatchewan, it's important to the people of Hudson Bay, but it's also very important to Canada to come to maybe put some funding into that. So these are the things that we're working on Highway 9 there south of Hudson Bay.
If I could just add a little bit to that as well, that you specified and the minister talked about the corridor specifically between Hudson Bay and Priestville, and that by itself is an important corridor, but right from Hudson Bay, almost right down to the U.S., well, it is right down to the U.S. border, is actually it's emerging as a pretty important corridor. At the end of Highway 9 is the Cirrus development, which is a Burlington Northern Railway, services that area, and a major kind of inland hub, transportation hub. So that's why I just wanted to add on to why we've positioned that with the federal government for a national trade corridor investment. When you think of the forestry sector in and around Hudson Bay in particular, you move a bit south to Yorkton along that corridor, and all the agriculture that takes place in between that, and Yorkton becoming kind of an ag value-added processing hub. And then continuing on that down to either you get on CN or CP from Yorkton, or you can go down to Burlington Northern using Highway 9 and connect on to that hub. So again, this is much longer term planning, but that's why we wanted to position and with the minister's help and support, position that with the federal government for a national trade corridor investment with the federal government. So we don't know what the outcome of that will be yet, but we're hopeful.
Now, is that Highway 9 all the way down that entire corridor?
Yeah, it runs all the way through.
Yeah, basically Hudson Bay starts and runs continuously all the way down through Yorkton, right down into Northgate specifically at the U.S. border.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know the minister heard a fair amount about Highway 9 in various portions of it at SUMA here recently, and I think SARM as well. So certainly commitments to that artery are important. Certainly if we can leverage some federal dollars to be deployed there, that's great. So thanks for that undertaking, but ultimately we need to make sure that it's that it's safe and has the kind of renewal and rebuild that's required. I'm interested in getting an update with respect to Esterhazy.
Under that, we did, we've got Highway 55 that's running east of Carrot River, and we managed to get money out of the federal government to cost share on that one. So, this isn't something that's impossible. Like we did manage to get money on that one, which also was a very important corridor for us. For Highway 55, as you know, runs all the way across the top end of the province. So it's an east-west corridor also. So we're fortunate there. So it's not impossible to get the money. I hope we do. We'll see what happens.
That's no. It's important for us to receive those federal dollars and continue to make those applications. That's not always the kind of message we hear in from your government with respect to the federal government, but they do play an important role to support this kind of renewal, of course, as well. With respect to Esterhazy to Whitewood, I think the minister took the question at SUMA on this as well, but the local EMS there says that it's it's just in a horrible situation. He said, like, you have to come and drive it. I know that area. I've been on that highway. I've been on those highways, but I don't know the current situation. But responding to the very serious concerns that have been brought to the minister, what's planned on those highways?
Yeah, the answer to your question there is now these are planned. They are not tendered yet, but they're planned for repaving for 19 kilometers, 19 kilometers south of the Capel Valley, and we've got a culvert installation at kilometer 27, and we've got a preservation for 5 kilometers. That would be on that same highway, but these haven't been tendered yet. But this is in the planning for this year.
Certainly, it sounds like it's in horrible condition. So the action's going to be important. With respect to some of the highways in through the north west in the province, namely Highway 155, that's in a real bad state. This is sort of Beauval to La Loche. I'm looking for what your commitment is on this front. I think that you've got a stretch that's about 175 kilometers there. That's in a real bad state. This year, there's a modest bit of money that's dedicated there, but I'm interested in knowing how many kilometers will be addressed this year of that important highway. And while we're talking about that area of the province, I'd be interested in getting an update as well on what actions are being taken to address the conditions on Highway 905, and maybe just a bit further detail on the Garson Lake Road as far as what's being advanced in this budget year.
That was between Beauval and La Loche?
155. Okay. For anyone that's driving the highway too, it's in a bad state, but there's incredible fried chicken at the gas station there at Beauval if you're looking to fuel up.
Okay, the Garson Lake, We're going to do the design on it, the design and the study on it, and it will be tendered this fall for completion next year. And Blair will do 155.
Thanks, Minister. We're just checking to confirm the distance basically from around Beauvelle to the Loche, just confirming the length of that. But we worked with the Northern ATPCs, Area Transportation Planning Committees, which are community-based, whether their membership is usually municipalities or northern communities that make up these, and the whole province is divided up into regions. But the northern ATPCs are who we worked with. They raise concerns about road conditions in the north from the Athabasca. Basically, the Northern Administrative District North is what their regions are. So we work closely with them on areas that they're seeing challenges. In this corridor, while it being quite long, there's some, like any road network, some parts of it are in better shape than other parts. So what we did, just because if we were to look at that whole corridor and upgrade it all at once, the numbers get to be quite large, and it becomes pretty hard to find the budget room to do one big project. So we thought, well, what can we do to improve that corridor? In many ways, looking at a couple of the spots along that way, if we could make improvements to those, it changes the feel and the ride for that whole corridor. So that's the approach, working with the ATPCs that we took up there. So so again, there's different spots, probably about, I'm looking at this, about between 8 and 9 kilometers that we'll be making improvements, but they're not continuous. They're in different spots where we see the worst condition of the road. So I can give a bit of location. They talk about kilometer 9, kilometer 12, kilometer 19, kilometer 84, and then kilometer 93. So again, different spots along that corridor. So we know that it's at least 93 kilometers long. But I think I'm going to venture on a bit of a guess here in terms of the actual length. I want to say it's between 100 and 125 kilometers, but don't hold me to that. That's off the top of my head.
I appreciate that. And the Garson Lake Road, of course, we'll be taking it to the Alberta border. Now we need Alberta to finish their side. Is that what undertakings has the minister taken to ensure that that Alberta does their side?
Well, Alberta did say that they would do their side before. We sent a letter to the Alberta government telling them what we were going to be doing and asking them, if they would now complete their side of it. And this is pretty important because it gives us gives us a good shot going up to Fort Mac, and there's a lot of equipment. People can be up there, going up there and working and whatnot. So this would be great if Alberta now will come on board and finish up on their end of it.
And you'll make sure that commitment is there. I mean, I know we need to make sure we're advancing our project, but ultimately we need to know that road is going to be able to continue on through into Alberta, that you're going to make sure that commitment's there.
As I said, we sent a letter to Alberta telling them that we were going to finish up our end of it and trying to persuade them to do their end of it.
Would you build to the border without their commitment that they're going to connect it?
Need a commitment, we're going to build there. So
well, let's make sure that Alberta connects their portion, and I think that's critical. Otherwise, we have a road to the border, but no, it doesn't serve its purpose, and we don't have the value with that expenditure that the people in the region and taxpayers deserve. So it's critical that Alberta is committed to their portion. Shifting just a bit, of course, transportation encompasses many aspects. Rail itself is so important to this province, to our producers, to our exporters, to our economy. We see the challenges of our underperforming rail system regularly. We see exceptional operations by way of the short lines across this province. But certainly reforms around rail and building out a system including port capacity and access is critical for us as an economy, critical to anyone who's getting into the fields here for this growing season and taking on that risk as a producer, again, knowing that they need to get that product to market in a timely way. So just a couple pieces within that. I know that the Port of Vancouver, it's a long-standing concern as to their governance. I believe we share a position that Saskatchewan and that Western Canada, the provinces in Western Canada aren't properly represented. The federal government, of course, has the lion's share of those directorships on that board right now. And I know we've been advancing the position that there should be representation of each of the western provinces, Manitoba through British Columbia. I think the case has been made that 2 reps for each province to adequately represent the provinces that are, I think, make up 85% of the trade that goes through that port. And then an accommodation, obviously, for the municipality there in BC around that port, as well as a couple seats for the federal government. Where's this initiative at? I mean, it's an important reform. It's a very important port. Where is this initiative at?
Oh boy, I could talk a long time on this one. But yes, the Port of Vancouver, has been a bone of contention for quite some time. There are 11 directors on the Port of Vancouver. British Columbia has 1. Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba have 1, and the rest are all from out in Vancouver. Now, I have written to the federal government saying that, Alberta has, and Alberta signed it, and Manitoba signed it, that we should have better representation on the board due to the fact that, and you said it right, 85% of the product going out of that port is coming from us, and it's the port. And I realize COVID has caused some problems, but as of 2 weeks ago, there were 65 ships sitting at anchor waiting in the port. Now, you're paying demurrage on those vessels and whatnot. I fully believe that we should have a far better say in the port, and it's next week, actually. I think it's next week. We're having a meeting with Westac here to, where we'll be talking about some of the shipping problems. And also, another thing I've been pushing on and have written a letter to the minister, federal minister, and we do have another port. We do have another port, and that's called Churchill. And I have belonged to the Hudson Bay Route Association for many years. For as long as I can remember, probably since the association started. I've always been an advocate for the Port of Churchill. I believe, with what is happening in Europe right now, we should be taking a very strong look at getting the Port of Churchill running full bore. It's a deep water port. We could be shipping product out through there, and especially since Europe is reliant on a lot of the grain that comes out of Russia and Ukraine. Let's face it, Ukraine's going to have, I don't know if they're going to have any kind of a crop this year the way things are going over there. I would hope things would end, but apparently some of the fields are mined over there and everything else. So it's chances are that there isn't going to be that much grain coming out of the Ukraine, and of course everybody has the sanctions against Russia. So here we are in Canada. We can provide that food for them, and to tell the truth, we can provide oil for them too, going out through that port. So it's something that I really want to push on, is to try and get stuff moving out that way, so it to help Europe not rely on Russia so much for their food stocks. And like I said, I for one would dearly love to see everything end and go back. But I think everybody has seen now what Russia is like, and even if the war were to end tomorrow, I don't think a lot of people are going back to be dealing with Russia in a great big hurry. And Canada is well situated to supply Europe with that product. Anyway, I could go on for a long time on this subject.
It's such a critical one to the economy, isn't it? And without a doubt, I mean, the exports that we can offer the world from a democracy like ours, our fertilizer, our potash, our food and our grains, our energy, as discussed, is critical, and certainly we need to be advancing that trade and securing those contracts and displacing, Russia's markets on this front now and well into the future. Europe, of course, is far too dependent on these fronts. Lots of the world are. If you look at Africa itself and the countries within it, the vast majority of its grains are supplied from Russia and then Ukraine. And so there's an economic imperative, there's a moral imperative as well, both in intervening to have the serious consequences for Putin and his regime, but also to feed hungry people who to address the food security needs. So there's no doubt that we need the export capacity, the transportation capacity on these fronts. You took Churchill, Port of Churchill was on my list as my next question, so you've spoken to it, and you have, I know you have interest in this file. I do as well. I'm interested in what undertakings you've taken on with the federal government and other provinces on this front, what you're committing to here in this current year, and what sort of scope of infrastructure needs are there to take the current port and transportation route and to make it that a potential viable alternative to consider in the way the minister describes.
Yeah, well, there's a few things there. One, and I did raise it up with all the federal transport ministers. Also, I brought up the Port of Churchill. I've talked to the minister in Manitoba about that. And so it's something that it's something I think that we definitely should be looking for. I think it should have been done a long time ago, but anyway, that's beside the point. They're working on the rail line right now to improve the rail line up there. Like they have had, the rail line, as you well know, was shut down for a while, and it is now being, I believe it's three Indigenous bands have taken over on the railway, and they're working on the railway at the present time to improve the railway going there. The other thing that we, and I just mentioned Highway 55, also it runs through and it joins up with Highway 9 at Bainbridge, and then it goes, and that's just a little ways away from the Manitoba border. Now the Manitoba side would have to do some work on their end too. The bridge that just goes into the Paw has to be changed. They've worked on their other bridges, bringing them up to specs, but the final bridge, and I don't know if you've ever been there, where it goes into the Paw, there's kind of a turn, and it would actually has to go on to the ONC reserve land. But they don't have a problem with that. So Manitoba Highways would also have to do some work on that. But that's also, that's a highway that gets it to the PAW, which it gets it that much closer. You can have a loading. Actually, there is a loading facility at a small loading facility at the PAW. And of course, it's not going right now because they're working on the rail line there. But it's definitely something. This has been something I've wanted for a long time, and I believe that it is only politics that is keeping that port from going. And I really want to see that port up and going because, like I said, it's a direct hit on ocean vessel. You have to take a look at when our grain goes out through Thunder Bay. And you're right, we can be supplying the potash. Because most of our main competitor, where is it? It's coming out of it's coming out of Russia, and so we can be sending our potash through there too. But right now, if you go through Thunder Bay, it all has to go to Montreal, and then everything has to be unloaded at Montreal, and then reloaded onto ocean-going vessel because the Lakers can't go across the ocean. So the Port of Churchill just makes sense.
With respect to the, again, rail performance and the Canada Grain Act review that is underway, it hasn't concluded yet. Did you take up a position or any undertakings with that review around rail performance and producer cars?
Could you, Mr. Witherspoon, could you just, I don't know exactly, we're sitting here exactly what you were talking about there.
So, of course, around rail performance, it's important that we push matters, that are pertinent to the CTA as well. But with respect to the Canada Grain Act, it is under review right now. They've received submissions. Some of the pieces, they're important aspects because they impact our ports, and some of the submissions as well have made calls to bolster producer cars, which would be a real asset for agriculture in our province, for producers in our province, and alleviate other stresses within the rail system. So I'm wondering if, as a province, as Transport Minister, if you've made a submission on this front.
Plug this into that.
We're thinking that we actually don't have that end of it here. I'm guessing that would be that Ag would be taking the head on it, and they haven't consulted with us. So.
No, I appreciate the response. I know the chair's given me the eye here that the time is up. It all connects, of course. We need that system to perform. I took these questions up with. These up with the Minister of Agriculture. In fact, we took up, rail at a bit greater length. Of course, it's just so important that we have some reforms and some change to make sure that we have the capacity and a system that can perform for producers in our province. But the chair's given me that eye, so what I'll do with that is say thank you to Madam Chair and committee members, but importantly the Minister and officials for all their time here tonight, more importantly for their work throughout the year. And of course, there's so many others that are connected to the work here tonight and that are involved in rebuilding those roads, maintaining those roads, keeping us safe throughout the year. We've got a looming storm that we're going to walk back out the doors to be greeted to, and so we send care to all those and thanks to all those that keep us safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Minister, if you have any closing remarks that you would like to make.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the committee members for being here and all the questions. I hope we answered them all properly for you, and I want to thank all the officials that came here tonight to spend this lovely breezy night inside. And I also want to thank Hansard for being around here tonight and listening to this. I'm sure it was just, you know, you were paying rapt attention to everything that was being said. Anyway, thank you again, and again, thank the committee.
Thank you, Minister. Having reached our agreed upon time, the Standing Committee on the Economy will now move to votes off the vote 16 for highways. Minister, you and your officials are welcome to leave if you'd like. So, thank you. All right, we have vote 16 on highways, central management and services, subvote HI01 in the amount of $17,263,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Preservation of transportation system, subvote HI04 in the amount of $118,193,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Infrastructure and transportation planning and policy, subvote HI06 in the amount of $3,968,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Infrastructure and equipment capital, subvote HI08 in the amount of $454,622,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Custom work activity, subvote HI09 in the amount of $0. Is that agreed? Carried. Operation of transportation system, subvote HI10 in the amount of $219,160,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Strategic municipal infrastructure, subvote HI15 in the amount of $32,697,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Non-appropriate expense adjustment in the amount of $259,239,000. Non-appropriate expense adjustments are non-cash adjustments presented for informational purposes only. No amount is to be voted. Highways, vote 16, $845,903,000. What happened to this one? Here we go, right there. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for highways in the amount of $845,903,000. Mr. Francis so moved. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Jump back here, right? Number 1, this is agriculture. Yes. That's highways. Okay. We will now move to vote 1, agriculture, central management and services, subvote AG01 in the amount of $11,972,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Industry assistance, subvote AG03 in the amount of $3,889,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Land management, subvote AG04 in the amount of $4,689,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Policy, trade, and value-added, subvote AG05 in the amount of $6,032,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Research and technology, subvote AG06 in the amount of $34,978,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Regional services, subvote AG07 in the amount of $35,307,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Program, subvote AG09 in the amount of $24,838,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Business risk management, subvote AG10 in the amount of $338,487,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Did I say 1,000 there or a million?
Yeah, he said the right one.
Okay. Non-appropriated expense adjustment in the amount of $2,319,000. Non-appropriated expense adjustments are non-cash adjustments presented for informational purposes only. No amount is to be voted. Agriculture vote, $460,192,000. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for agriculture in the amount of $460,192,000. Mr. Cockrell so moves. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. This one?
Yeah.
Energy and Resources, vote 23, Central Management and Services, subvote ER01 in the amount of $23,197,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Energy Regulation, subvote ER05 in the amount of $124,483,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Resource Development, subvote ER06 in the amount of $77,490,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Non-appropriated expense adjustment in the amount of $3,949,000. Non-appropriated expense adjustments are non-cash adjustments presented for informational purposes only. No amount is to be voted. Energy and Resources, vote 23, $225,170,000. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for Energy and Resources in the amount of $225,170,000. Mr. Hargrave so moves. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried.
Joe. Dodge truck owners, they burn energy.
Vote 89, Immigration and Career Training. Central Management and Services subvote IC01 in the amount of $18,716,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. There. Carried. Immigration and Employment and Career Development subvote IC02 in the amount of $11,680,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Training and Employer Services subvote IC03 in the amount of $5,141,000. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Labor Market Program subvote IC04 in the amount of $552,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Non-appropriated expense adjustment in the amount of $1,620,000. Non-appropriated expense adjustments are non-cash adjustments presented for informational purposes only. No amount is to be voted. Immigration and Career Training, vote 89, $158,089,000. That's a different amount.
That's the non-appropriated adjustment.
Okay. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for Immigration and Career Training in the amount of $158,089,000. Mr. Cockrell so moves. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. Vote 84, Innovation Saskatchewan. Innovation Saskatchewan subvote IS01 in the amount of $122,227,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Innovation Saskatchewan, vote 84, $122,227,000. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for Innovation Saskatchewan in the amount of $122,227,000. Mr. Francis so moves. Is that agreed? Carried. Vote 90, Trade and Export Development, Central Management and Services, subvote TE01 in the amount of $6,173,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Strategic Policy and Competitiveness, subvote TE02 in the amount of $3,122,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Economic Development, subvote TE03 in the amount of $9,381,000. Is that agreed? Carried. International Engagement, subvote TE04 in the amount of $17,490,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Saskatchewan Economic Recovery Rebate, subvote TE05 in the amount of $0. Is that agreed? Carried. Non-appropriated expense adjustment in the amount of $70,000. Non-appropriated expense adjustments are non-cash adjustments presented for informational purposes only. No amount is to be voted. Vote 87. Oh, give me that then. Trade and Export Development, vote 90, $36,166,000. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for Trade and Export Development in the amount of $36,166,000. Mr. Hargrave so moves. Is that agreed? Carried. Now you can have it. Can you give me that? This one here, right? Yeah. And one more. Go. Yeah. Vote 87, Water Security Agency. Water Security Agency subvote WS01 in the amount of $68,778,000. Is that agreed? Carried. Water Security Agency, vote 87, $68,778,000. I will now ask a member to move the following resolution. Resolved that there be granted to Her Majesty for the 12 months ending March 31st, 2023, the following sums for Water Security Agency in the amount of $68,778,000. Mr. Cockrell so moves. Is that agreed? Carried. That concludes our business this evening. I would ask a member to move a motion of adjournment. Mr. Francis so moves. All agreed? Carried. This committee stands adjourned until the call of the chair.